as there was no protest after the sermon by the moderator or by any member of the council against the sentiments advanced, we wish to know whether silence in this case is to be construed into assent. We were hoping that when the Venerable Dr. Pierce arose to offer the ordaining prayer, he would have said to the candidate, "If your sentiments accord with those of the preacher, I cannot consecrate you to the Christian ministry."
No one with whom I converse failed to speak of the contrast between the sentiments of the discourse and of the prayer that immediately followed. If there were those who might imbibe the erroneous sentiments of Mr. Parker, the antidote was administered, as it seems to me, in a manner more effectual than the course that you would have us take. And as a result, proved the people were of age and could speak, and did speak, for themselves. It may suffice in reference to our duty to Mr. Shackford on the occasion that we could not consider him as answerable to Mr. Parker.
But since Mr. Parker has in the most public manner repeatedly uttered sentiments as truly deistical before and since, Mr. Shackford must be presumed to have known this fact when he gave his approval of the choice of him to preach his ordination sermon. He must, in the absence of proof to the contrary, be presumed to sympathize with him.
I answer that no Unitarian clergyman feels himself responsible for his brethren or authorized to speak for them. We recognize no creed, covenant, or union of any kind that interferes with individual liberty and independence. I cannot answer, therefore, for all of the members of the council. I can only speak for myself. And for myself, I am free to say that I do not approve of some of the sentiments advanced by Mr. Parker. Most seriously and solemnly, I protest against them. I am free to answer further that if I entertain some of the opinions which, if I understood Mr. Parker correctly to present, I should think that I ought to leave the Christian pulpit, that it is no longer the place in which I ought to stand as a professed Christian teacher. But if Mr. Parker thinks otherwise, if he can find a people willing to hear and ministers willing to exchange with him, that is his affair, not mine.
Here is a simple fact to which we call attention. The Unitarian ministers of Boston and vicinity have united with one whom they confess to be a preacher of another gospel in ordaining a man to the sacred office, thus publicly striking hands with one whom they declare to be a deist. There is a duty for the Unitarian clergy to perform, and that is say distinctly yes or no to the question, is the preacher of such sentiments a Christian minister? They claim to be Christian ministers. Is he one of them?
I have answered this question as far as I'm able. Will you permit me to propose one or two? What was your object in making with some parade and public inquiry relative to this matter? Were you not assured before speaking on this matter that the sentiments of that sermon were not in harmony with the principles and the opinions commonly entertained by Unitarians? You would attempt to bring additional odium upon a denomination all of whom you and your brethren are accustomed to regard as infidels and heretics. You know very well that neither the members of the council nor Unitarians generally can be considered responsible for Mr. Parker's peculiarities of opinion. One more word. In asking whether the members of the council acknowledge Mr. Parker as a Christian minister, you imply that the members of the council are themselves Christian ministers, an acknowledgement which the orthodox clergy have not been ready to make. Are you ready to recognize myself and other members of that council as Christian ministers and extend toward us ministerial courtesy and fellowship?
You say you have no creed. Of course you do not examine the candidate for the ministry as to his religious beliefs. How then, my dear sir, did you know that you were not about to assist in setting over those people as their religious teacher, a deist? The question then presented was not concerning creeds or slight differences of opinions among believers in Christ, but this was the question: Christianity or infidelity? Bible or no Bible? You indeed say, if Mr. Parker can find people willing to hear him, that is their affair. While I would have such a man and such people enjoy all the rights of religious liberty without inflicting pain for penalty or for so doing, yet it would have been gratifying to have found in your response a declaration that you will do nothing which is even the appearance of bidding them Godspeed or of countenancing their errors. I would rather see every Unitarian congregation in our land dissolved, or every one of their churches occupied by other denominations, or razed to the ground, than assist in placing a man entertaining the sentiments of Mr. Parker in one of their pulpits.
Your position before the public, as I conceive it, is this. The orthodox portion of the Congregationalists have for some years been separated from the Unitarian portion of the Congregationalists and have refused to recognize or have fellowship with them as Christians. You belong to the Orthodox Congregationalists. You either do or do not concur in the course they have pursued in relation to Unitarians. We Unitarians do not recognize your right or duty to institute an inquisition over us. The differences and difficulties of our own denomination, we can settle amongst ourselves.